Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this portion of tonight's Public Works, Recreation, and Arena Committee. I am your chair, Jason Trombetta. We'll start off with obviously, all cell phones, pagers, PDAs to be turned off. Any change in order of the items on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on to number 3, disclosure of any peculiar interest or conflict of interest. Seeing none, there are no appointments. We have no one to request any items on the agenda either. We'll scroll down to consent agenda items. List below are considered to be routine, non-controversial, and will be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of council requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution, considering immediately following the adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. So item PW 33-17, West Lincoln Public Library Board, April 11, 2017 minutes. 2 RFD 19, 2017, authorization to service agreement with the region of Niagara for child care subsidies. Report number 3, RFD C-07, 2017, signing authority for project management consultant in agreement with the Wellandport Library Community Center Improvements Project. The recommendation of Public Works Recreation Committee hereby approve the following consent agenda items: 1, 2, item 1 be hereby received for information, 2 and 3 to be hereby received for recommendations, contend they're adopted with any exceptions. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Seeing Councillor Chichuk, Councillor Kandan. Any comments or questions? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries. Move on to communications. Item PW 34-17, Niagara Region Clerk's Department, request for support from Niagara Regional Transit Service Delivery Governance Strategy. Refer to the attached presentation. A recommendation that council of the named municipality, the Council of the Township of West Lincoln consents the passage of bylaw number 2017-21 of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, being a bylaw to provide Niagara Regional with non-exclusive authority to establish, operate, and maintain the intermunicipal passenger transportation system of the region of Niagara. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bell, Mayor Joyner, comments or questions? Councillor Chichuk.
Yes, can you explain that to me just a little differently, very simply, for the sake of the people who are listening to this?
You want me to?
No, probably Mayor Joyner. In other words, we're giving right to the region to establish and operate, maintain intermunicipal transportation, but since it's non-exclusive, that means others could get into it. I just want to keep that clear, because there's people that don't necessarily see this entire agenda and they're wondering what's going on.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. This is part of a bigger decision that Regional Council has to make. One of the decisions they have to make is whether or not to get into regional transit, and that transit vote will be put through to the region by what they call a triple majority vote. So we are one cog in the wheel of making the decision whether or not the Niagara region should take their transportation system from a pilot project to a full working project. As the report says, the 3 major transit commissions, I'm just going to call them that, transit commissions, being the City of Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and Welland, have decided to amalgamate, and which will mean that through the region they will provide transit for all of Niagara. There will be subsequent routes that are spin-offs of this transit option, and of which it has been identified by the Niagara region that the municipality of West Lincoln will be a part of that. They'll be a part of that by virtual of a triangle that will go from West Lincoln to Grimsby to Lincoln, and then back to West Lincoln. So that'll be the West Niagara Triangle. There will also be options such that there will be a bus that can perform a route that happens from West Lincoln to St. Catharines and West Lincoln to Welland. Part of that being that will allow the students of West Lincoln to be able to get to our post-secondary education. Brock University in the north and the Niagara College in the north and the south, as they have two campuses. Niagara actually have three campuses, but the two being Glendale, Niagara-on-Lake, and in Welland. As I said earlier, this is part of a triple majority vote that will be happening coming up later on, and I think it's with the growth of West Niagara, I think it's a good thing for West Lincoln, and I will be hoping that council will vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Any more comments, questions? Councilor Gannan?
Just through you, Mr. Chair, could I ask the mayor also, please, if he, the map was very small. I saw the dotted lines showing that there will be a future date where West Lincoln will be tied in, but I don't recall seeing an estimated time frame for that. Do we know whether that's estimated in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Any idea, Mr. Mayor?
It's a very good question, Councillor. I'll respond by saying that one of the main things that bringing the GO train to Niagara, one of the main reasons that is to make the region of Niagara grow up, bringing passengers from the Toronto area and connecting basically Toronto to New York City. So as it goes from Toronto to Niagara Falls and eventually Niagara Falls, New York to New York, that will create the umbilical cord. So in essence, what the GO and Metrolinx has asked is that if they're going to provide GO Transit to Niagara, it is time for the rest of the region to grow up and provide intermunicipal transit. And they're very much looking forward to that because obviously they're looking for a way to feed the GO train on a daily basis. So I'm going to answer your question by saying anywhere between 2019 and 2021 will be the routes that will be coming to West Lincoln from the three major transit commissions, being St. Catharines, Welland, and Niagara Falls.
Thank you.
Any more comments, questions? Councilor Chichar?
So, yes, bless you. So basically, that was the point that I was trying to get at, is that our transit system will be a feeder system because the trans-regional connection is the GO train, and it will take us to different places. But much like Mississauga or any large community, they basically are linking their people within their communities, but to larger transit systems being Metrolinx or GO, as you may say it, whether it's heavy rail, medium rail, or bus. It's that this plan for transit within the intermunicipal part is supported by the connections of GO that are going to, or Metrolinx, throughout the region of Niagara. And it will be robust in its interdependence on one another. Would that be correct, Mr. Mayor?
Very much, Councillor, that is correct, and I'll also say that doesn't stop us from providing our own municipal transit too as well. If we wish to make connections with, let's say, Pelham to the east, they have their own transit system too. We could do that too. I'm going to ask the CAO if he could just kind of give us a brief overture of conversations that he's had with Hamilton Transit too as well. Mr. CEO, could you provide that, please?
Mr. Chair, through the members of council, yes, staff has conducted some inquiries with respect to providing local transit and transit providers and services. So there has been some dialogue with the City of Hamilton, so we can focus on that corridor of our municipality. And then we've also looked at possibly speaking with, not possibly, but entertaining a partnership with Pelham, so we can look at that corridor of our municipality. And then you'd look at intermunicipal transit that would get you down to the Grimsby, which would get you down to the GO. So overall, there is some staff has been conducting some work, I guess you would say, behind the scenes. There hasn't been that much presented because we are compiling the information. There has been some information presented to the Transit Committee, but there is definitely an opportunity for partnerships. There's definitely an opportunity for service delivery, and I've been kind of preaching that for a few years here, where we need to start partnering up with other municipalities, and not just maybe the ones within Niagara region, but thinking outside the box and opening up our doors and saying, hey, what can work? And that could be on any level of service, whether it's economic development, transit, whatever it might be. There's opportunities there, and they're very positive opportunities. And I think if you put the right business case and plan together, be very successful for the residents of West Lincoln, not only for now, but also planning for the future. So.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any further comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could I ask for a recorded vote? It just means a lot to me and in the Niagara region, if we could do that, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Start, go ahead, Carol.
In favor?
Opposed.
Support?
Support?
Support.
Thank you, councillors.
Move on to number 8, staff reports amendment to budget. This is Vanessa Holmes, CEO, West Lincoln Public Library. Hi, Vanessa. Confirmation of funding, improvement of Wellandport Library Community Center project. Recommendation, amendment to budget that West Lincoln Public Library Board hereby confirms and approves the funding sources established for the improvement of Wellandport Library Community Center project as follows. Federal, Ontario contribution, $440,000 under the 150 Community Infrastructure Program. Library Reserve contribution, $803,000. Development charges, $95,000. Total project funding, $1,338,000. And that the West Lincoln Public Library Board hereby confirms and approves the budgeted cost for the improvement of the Wellandport Library Community Center project as outlined in the grant application as follows. Plan designing engineer, $127,000. Repair and construction, $1,058,000. Project management, $33,000. Contingency, $120,000. Total expenses, $1,338,000. And that the project costs and fees be expensed to the Library Reserve Fund, and that the Library Reserve be paid back with any future development charges collected related to the Wellandport Library expansion, and that the CAO be hereby directed to forward this motion to the Public Works Recreation Committee immediately prior to the ratification of these minutes. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Sorry? Oh, okay. Councillor Ganan and Councillor Chichuk. Comments or questions? Councillor Bosma.
Just a quick question to whoever can answer it. The 803 from the library reserve, does that empty the reserve or does it actually keep some in the reserve?
We don't. Vanessa, can you answer that? No, we don't have Donna here, but.
Through you, Chair Trombetta, to you, Councillor Bilsma. It doesn't empty the library reserve. We still have some funds available. I don't have, well, actually, at the beginning of 2017, the library reserve was at $889,310. So that still leaves some money available if we need things like furnishings or other things as we're moving ahead with the project.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Rayner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to the CEO, could you please explain number 4, future development charges collected related to the Wellandport Library expansion? I don't understand that. Development charges are usually for subdivisions and stuff. What is it collected relating to the Wellandport Library expansion? I don't understand.
Just, I think the CEO can help you out with that, Councillor Rayner. He's got his hand up.
Mr. Chair, through the members of council, our development charges sorry, that's correct. That's what you're looking for. The development charges are exactly what we've been talking about for the past year and a half, 2 years with respect to building for the future. All these charges that we can collect through new builds, through permits, can go towards services such as this. Hence why the $23 million that we're proposing for the multi-use rec site is actually a $10,000 reduction based on our permit. So when we do the review, as Donna was saying earlier tonight, we sit down collectively as a team, we identify all of our capital projects, all of our future goals and objectives, obviously mandated through council, at least on a 10-year forecast, and then those things are incorporated into the DC charges. Obviously, there's only so much we can collect collectively. There is requirements and stipulations involved with the DCs, but this is just part of our overall future plans and part of the program that allows you to develop services such as programs with our DCs. So I believe it's part of the study that we've incorporated within the township, and it's going to be open again, as Donna said tonight, within the next few months, so that we'll have additional projects or services, i.e. we might want to throw in transit, whatever it is. There's a huge list that staff has compiled so far for DCs that staff will consider. Thank you.
Anything further? Oh, Councilor Rayner?
I'm sorry, I still understand that these future development charges collected, that's related to the Wellington Library. So what in the development charges that we get in the township of West Lincoln is related to the Wellington Library expansion? And how does it relate to it that it would get the money? That's where I'm trying to understand the logic of what development charges are going to the Wellington Library because they're allocated that. How do we know?
CEO?
Mr. Chair, through the members of council, there's a calculation that is established through the DC policy that identifies how much, see, for example, we get $500 off every new build. $5 goes towards a bridge, $5 goes towards Wellandport, $5 goes towards a new library in the urban area. There's a whole criteria that's established in how we're broken down. And in addition to that, as I said prior, you can only collect so much. So there is a cap eventually that you get to. However, this is eventually going to be allowing us to collect further DCs because this is on our DC document.
CAO, who establishes the percentages that go to all those things that you mentioned? All those percentages, how do we get them?
Mr. Chair, through members of council, I believe it's based on the provincial guidelines that are established. Hence why you go out and you hire a consultant that will come back and will identify your DC, your mountable DC charges that can be identified within your capitals.
So if I take this one step farther, future development charges collected right to Wellington Library, are there also development charges built up in the library or other libraries, like the one at Castoville or the one here or the one being built? Is there reserves also for them when they need to be rebuilt or whatever the case like is going on in Wellington? There'll come a time when they'll have to be refurbished. Is there a percentage of that DCs that are going into a fund specifically down the road to take care of those situations?
Mr. Chair, through the members of council, DCs are only for new builds. So anything that needs a renovation, so for example, Caster, this is why it was very difficult for us to renovate our current arena because we couldn't use any of our DCs that we've collected today or we can collect in the future. So when you look at DCs, you have to think of new build, new footprint. So hence why the Wellandport Library has a new footprint. We're doing renovations, we're doing expansions, we can utilize money on that. We can also utilize these funds for the new library that's going to be in town, part of the MERS project.
So even though they're fixing the Wellington Library, it's considered a new build, when actually it's almost like a rental, isn't it? Plus a little bit added on.
There you go.
It's an expansion.
It's kind of an add-on.
It's a larger amount of footprint. So if you had 500 square feet and now we're putting in 1,000 square feet, that 500 additional square feet is DCable.
It's considered a new build.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's like expansion on your house. If you have an expansion house, you don't say I got a new house. You just say I got an expansion on my house.
But you
So
pay
when
more
say-
taxes.
Unless you're MPAC.
Unless your impact, yeah, unless they come
Okay.
with a charge. No, that's not what I meant.
But that's what's the answer.
I didn't consider Wellandport a new build. I considered it a rental addition. If the existing structure is still
addition.
there, it's just added to.
The
That's
addition.
where I got confused.
Okay, one at a time. One at a time, please, through the chair. Continue. You finished with your questions, Councilor Rayner? Thank you. Thank you. No, that's just all this banter back and forth. It's just everybody shut. I can't understand anything. Councilor Chichuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really do think that what this shows is that before we get into the development charges, an opportunity for us to have a workshop where we can all understand the detail, because development charges are very complex. There's no getting around it. But I think if we were to look at this plus the new library we're building, through you, Mr. Chair, to the CEO, we are adding to the inventory of library availability we have in this township, correct? So the development charges the study is going to show that we have more library. And for that, we're going to increase our development charges in the next go-around. So I believe, Mr. Chair, with the greatest of respect and integrity here, that the library reserve be paid back says that we're building in excess of what it is our current population supports at the 1 foot per whatever the standard is. So what this motion allows us to do is to capture or get more from each build, because we're providing libraries into the future so that we'll be at a standard at some point within the 10-year, 12-year, 20-year framework. So this motion is giving us the chance to collect from future homes the amount that we're putting in place so they'll have a library when they get here. Much like what we did with the whole recreation project, we're saying we're building more than we need right now, but we're putting in place because you guys say you're coming. As far as the library, through you, Mr. Chairman, is that what we're doing? I'm not trying to be sharp or blunt. I'm just, I think what I'm trying to do is make it simple.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So this motion is very important to say the future will pay for some of what's going to be built right now. Expanded, in one place. But the library as a component of our DCs is the entirety of all libraries. So it doesn't matter where we build it. It matters that it's part of the component in the DC charges, which our treasurer showed us tonight, has a component in our entire DC charge. So for this, I thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chief. Councilor Bell.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no disrespect to anybody, but the Coles Note version of this whole thing is we're changing the footprint. That's what we're doing. That's why the DCs are going to apply. Simply put, Coles Note version. That's it. Thank you.
I got a question. So when, hold on a second. Through you, through myself to Vanessa, sorry, I'm so used to, when was the footprint changed? Vanessa, not you. Are you Vanessa? When was the footprint changed?
So through you, to you, Mr. Chair, the footprint was changed. So when we applied for the grant, we were able to stipulate a certain percentage increase, up to a 15% of the entire building. So that was when we decided to change the actual footprint. But that was based on an earlier study that we did, the Savedas Facilities Review, that recommended a few different options, option A, B, or C, and option A was that 15% expansion.
And, sorry, say that, so when was the 15% discussed, sorry? Like, when was that, before the grant was issued? Is that like?
So we used the Savedas Facilities Assessment to inform the grant application. So they provided, like I said, the 3 recommendations, and really within the parameters of the grant, option A, the 15% expansion, was the only one that we could actually do. Option B was tear down, a complete rebuild. And C, I believe, was the library taking over the whole hall and community center, which also was not realistic.
Okay, thank you. She answered okay? You have nothing else to rebuttal? Okay, sir. Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none? All those in favor? And that carries. Item C, amendment to budget, Vanessa Holm, West Lincoln Public Library, Wellandport Library Community Center. The recommendation that Hank Kudema, project manager, be hereby authorized and directed to proceed with the following work which is required in order to move the project forward and gather the necessary information for the design team. Did I? Sorry about that. Sorry. I was scrolled down too much. Sorry, let me back up. Let's go to B. Amendment to budget, PW 36-17, Vanessa Holm, West Lincoln Public Library, design and construction review, Wellandport Library Community Center. Recommendation that Hank Kudema of Kalos Engineering, project management, be hereby and authorized and direct to assemble sole source and hire a team of consultants to complete the design of the construction review for $104,460,000, which cost includes architectural, Envisage, is that correct? Envisage Architects Inc., $63,160. Structural engineering, Kalos Engineering, $8,500. Mechanical engineering, Filler Engineering, $17,800. Electrical engineering, SEI Electrical Engineering, $15,000. And that the provisions for the tendering amount of over $75,000 as per section 4.5 of the tender purchasing policy, Township of West Lincoln, be and is hereby waived in order to expedite the project that meets timelines required for the Canada 150 grant, and design fees be expensed to the library reserve funds, and that the CAO be hereby directed to forward this motion to the Public Works Recreation Committee immediately prior to the ratification of these minutes. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Chichuk, Councillor Balsma, comments or questions? Councillor Bell.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions. No intent to hold this project up, but I need some answers, I guess, is how did we get here now? How did we get to where we are? Who would like to answer that?
Can you maybe answer that, Vanessa, if you can? Like, how are we at this point? I guess he's asking.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, to you, Councillor Bell. For clarification, do you mean how are we at the point of going forward with architecture and the engineers?
The amendment to budget, how do we get to that point for this amendment?
Okay. So we had our first meeting of the ad hoc facility committee. And in that meeting, we discussed two different options of how to proceed. One was that Hank Kudema, our project manager, go ahead and sole source a team of consultants. So as you see, the architecture firm and the engineers. And then the other one was, the other option was for us to go out and tender each individual consultant. At the meeting, we discussed the different options, and because it's a consensus committee, everyone agreed that the recommendation that would be brought to the library board was to go forward and sole source because of time. If we are going to tender for each individual, then we could potentially be delayed by months. And Hank Kudema, the project manager, is actually here, and he could describe in more detail the different options. The other thing is his fees as the project manager also are discounted if he's going through and sole sourcing rather than having to spend the time and tender each individual. So in the interest of time and money and project completion by the March 2018 date, the recommendation of the committee was as you see it here.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we have a procurement policy in place, which looks like it was stepped around. So who authorized this without the committee or council? Like, you know, if it was that critical, it should have come back to council through the conversation with the mayor to call a emergency meeting or something, but there is a procurement policy in place, and then it was authorized, and like, it was done through a consensus at the committee, but by the sounds of it. Is that correct?
Mrs. Hall?
So, as I said, it is consensus, the committee. And in the meeting, everyone did decide that this is the recommendation that would be put forth to the library board. And then the library board, when presented with this, they voted, it was carried, and that's why it's being brought here tonight.
So there was never any talk about the procurement or how it should come back to council at all from anybody? I mean, I guess that's, my question is, I guess very simply put, is that why was it sidestepped?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bell, there was definite discussion of it in the committee, and that's why a portion of the recommendation is even saying that that it is over the $75,000, and that it is hereby waived. And so there was discussion and consideration of it at the meeting. But again, in the interests of time and money, that's why the recommendation was put forth, that we're able to go ahead and sole source.
No other questions right now?
Council Paz?
Yeah, we, experience means a lot, and we've just gone through this with the MERS project, and so now we just kind of come back to a small project. As somebody on that committee, I know we had a kind of a fulsome discussion, and obviously in the interest of this is our probably the most challenging parameter that we need to meet is the timeline factor, because the money has an expiry date on it, and that's the March. That expiration date is large in terms of a parameter that we need to meet. Now, as somebody who likes to make sure that taxpayer dollars are spent well and wisely, I was one who strongly considered the full RFP process. But I was convinced, and so in this sense, I guess I stake my reputation or my comments that I've made in other areas. I weigh that and felt that because of the sole source opportunity, there was some savings that Kalos Engineering was able to provide, which offset a potential benefit from multi-sourcing. So when you multi-source, of course, you have the option of taking the cheapest, and there might be a savings there. And of course, you put together the working drawing, but we also would, by sole sourcing, we would be saving the money of the RFP process. So that was the savings there are what Ms. Holm is talking about. So there's the time factor, which is the overall. That expiry date is a big, very immovable parameter because we don't get to set it. And then the funding, I think, is at the very least completely neutered by the fact that we have savings in terms of the sole source. So, in other words, a decision, there was a decision at the committee level to come forward with this recommendation. So they made a decision based on their discussions that this is the way that they're comfortable to go. The committee passed it on to the library board. The library board was also satisfied with the explanation for why the committee suggested to them go with the sole source. And so the library board in turn has come to us and is recommending this based on the discussions they've had. So, I mean, there were 6 or 7 people around the table at the committee level, then the board again. I don't know how many there were there, but they had a discussion. So that's why it's coming, Mr. Chairman, to the council at this time as a recommendation. So That's it.
I got Counselor Chichek. Do you want to?
Okay.
I got Counselor Chichek first. Yeah.
Thank you. Just to add to Councillor Bilsma, I think if we added clarity to item number 4, that the CEO be and is hereby directed to forward this motion to the Public Works Recreation Arena Committee immediately prior to the ratification of these minutes, that really should say by the Library Board. Because the committee that was struck, which the town put people on to, is not a committee that will make decisions. We came together and we listened, and Mr. Hudema has done a lot of work with regard to the MERS, and it was suggested that there was a way to ensure that we would get the project done that would be of a relative same cost as Councillor Bilsma has brought out, because we wouldn't be tendering, and that was a deviation from town policy, which is why number 2 is there, and the recommendation to waive the procedural bylaw, the purchasing and tendering bylaw, and that recommendation was made to the Library Board to be considered by them, because what we were doing is looking and weighing the alternatives. It would cost more to tender and evaluate it, but we might lose $400,000. So in Mr. Hudema's estimation, we would likely be within the same ballpark, regardless of which method or which way we went. And we took that based on the fact that we've also entrusted him with a much larger decision just recently, and we really didn't want to lose that grant. So the recommendations in this recommendation are really from that group, that steering committee, gone to the Library Board for ratification. This is not that committee making these motions. That was the Library Board sending it to us here to endorse and approve the waiving of the procedural bylaw. So we in no way made any decisions at the committee meeting. We gave it to the Library Board to make the decision there. I just want to clarify that, because it sounded like that committee made some decisions and they didn't.
You want to, for a second time, Counselor Bell? Okay. Sorry, Counselor Gannett.
No, go ahead. I've been saying.
No, I just wanted to say that I was not at the ad hoc committee meeting, obviously, but I was at the Library Board, where it was, again, thoroughly discussed. And this definitely is a recommendation from the Library Board. As I've stated many times, we have waited years and years and years to try to do something about that library. And to miss an opportunity of another $440,000 on top of, what we've been putting aside just seemed too good to pass up. And so the decision was to try to move this forward in this manner. And that's why it was put in as it being asked to have this, the policy waived in order for the proficiency of moving forward the project. So.
Thank you.
So I totally understand what's being said. The question had to be asked. It was asked. And I still wonder why the question, with all this representation that was there and being discussed as heavily as it was, why it was not suggested, let's have an emergency meeting so we can get around the procurement issue. It's just, to me, it's that simple. Because of what the project is, it's okay to do it this way this time, but the next time might be different for something else. So I got some answers. That's all I was looking for at this point. So thank you very much.
I got go ahead. Counselor Chichek.
I'm confused. An emergency council meeting wouldn't have gotten us around the tendering and purchasing policy. We're here because we don't want to go out and tender. So it's here as expeditiously as it could have gone, and we didn't try and circumvent the policy. We're here listening to the Library Board say to us, waive provisions B and is hereby waived in order to expedite this project. So having a special council meeting wouldn't have gone us any further ahead. So we're here, and it's there, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to call the question.
We will at the appropriate time, Counselor Chichek. There's more people who don't speak. I'd like to speak if that's okay too.
Say it at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair.
Counselor Rayner.
Thank you. I was very much in support of the Keystone reserves have been built up, the fundraising has been done for a long period of time, and I think it's time is long enough. Let's get this thing done. And it would be nice to utilize that $440,000. So I mean, it would be crazy, and it would not be prudent for council to jeopardize the loss of that money, considering all these years we've built up the reserve fund, and now we've got this additional. The project in the past has been a dream, and now it can be a reality. It just seems, I understand what Councilor Bell is saying, he's following protocol and procedure that I appreciate and respect, but under this particular situation, I think if another one came up where the government was going to offer us $500,000 or $1 million and it was time sensitive, I think we'd probably do the same thing again. In fact, I hope they do offer us a few more. So, I'm all for this. I understand the reasoning, what happened, and I believe we should get this thing going ASAP.
Sorry, Mr. Rayner, Councilor Rayner, you were a part of the Casersville Library? I wasn't aware that you were a part of the Casersville.
Casersville project, to get that, I was very much pushing to get the Casersville.
You were on council.
All we had before was a house on John Street.
You were on council at that time?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I got just one thing, like, as chair of Recreation Committee and Library, I wasn't invited to any of this. I'm kind of disappointed. I think as chair of the committee, I think I should have been informed by somebody from council about this instead of getting this tonight and getting it pushed. I didn't get an email about any meetings or anything, and I think it's unfair for myself as the chair, because I've had other members of committee upset that they weren't notified, and that's came up in the past. So now the shoe has turned, and it's also happened to me. So I think it's unfair as chair that I was not aware of any of this stuff. I think it would have been a nice gesture to also let me know, but obviously that did not happen. But again, I see that there's a grant, and I understand the purpose of it. So I'm not opposed to the grant or anything, but I just think that some of the ways about this was done a little bit incorrectly, especially that I'm chair of Recreation Committee, Recreation, Leisure, and Library. So those are my comments. Anybody, any other further comments or questions?
I do. I have a comment. We went through a process of appointing who would go to this committee at the last meeting, and talked about an alternate and who we would send. And that was quite a long discussion. If I remember correctly, that's when we found out what the date of the meeting was. So that was discussed at the last meeting. And I think this goes 100% to my concern about having calendars that are fulsome in the number of meetings and events that are going on. There's so much going on in this town, and so many events that we're now all needing to be aware of. Councillor Trombetta, what we really do need is to get a calendar that has all meetings on it, so that no one's making accusatory comments back and forth one way or t'other. I totally.
We're just talking transparency, Councillor Chichuk. We're not talking about calendars.
I'm talking about transparency. I'm talking about transparency on all matters. And if we had a calendar that had everybody's events on it, then it wouldn't sound like we didn't know about it. And so.
Well, I even reached out.
I understand your concern.
I'm just saying,
I understand the fact that you didn't get a special invitation, but I thought that since we were all here and we talked about it, that meant that anybody could go because it was a public meeting.
I reached out for meetings to many of my colleagues around the table. I even called one in Hawaii to reach out to him. So that's all my point is. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor?
Can I have a record vote, please?
Yep.
Councillor Bell. In favor. Councillor Bosma. In favor. Councillor Gannon. Councillor Rayner. Mayor Joyner.
In favor.
Councillor
Support.
Nothing, that's carried.
We'll go on to number 9. Nope, C, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm way ahead of myself here. This thing keeps scrolling down on me. C, amendment to budget. Mrs. Holm, West Lincoln Public Library, Wellandport Library Community Center. That recommendation that Hank Kuhn, my project manager, be hereby authorized and directed to proceed with the following work, which is required in order to move the project forward and gather necessary information for the design team. Building measurement, $1,000. Topographic survey, $2,500. Septic system review totaling $5,500, and that the fees for the building measurement, topographic survey, and septic system review for a total cost of $5,500 be expensed to the Library Reserve Fund, and that the CEO be hereby directed to forward this motion to the Public Works Committee arena immediately prior to ratification of these minutes. I need a mover or a seconder. Mayor Joyner, Councilor Rayner. Comments or questions? Mayor Joyner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was much discussion about this around the table at the ad hoc meeting. I would suggest that perhaps some members around the table thought that we should already have this information. It is my view, and only my opinion, that in order to get this project set off on the right foot, that this is vital information that all people involved in developing this library expansion will need in order to move forward in a timely manner. Building measurement is important, topographical survey is important, and the septic system review obviously is very important when you're looking at expanding a new library, which is in conjunction with a community hall. So I would suggest that this $5,500 is money well spent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? Let's go one. When all this was coming forward, just curiosity, I know so from the other one. Who's all, maybe Councilor Bylsma or Councilor Chicha can answer it, or who was sitting on all the Hawk committee when all this stuff was to come forward? Who's sitting on the, thank you. If you can state the
I'll
people.
state what I can do from memory, and then Councillor Chichok can correct. But I believe it was Norm Vaughn, who represents the actual community hall, Vanessa Holm, the mayor, Councillor Chichok, myself, Hank Kutima, and
Mrs. Peckham, the chair of the committee.
Bob Dennison,
Yes.
and yes, Peckham.
Is that it? Nobody else?
So I missed one. You guys got it. So that was Joan Peckham.
So all those meetings, that's what was there at these meetings?
We've had one.
Oh, we've had one, okay.
Yeah. So again, I think it just could be said.
it's a one and done?
Time is kind of the essence, right? Because we got the approval, but within that year, the date of the approval, we have to do this. So yeah, we've had the one. It made recommendations to the board. So that's why these things have these kind of immediately words in there, peppered throughout the recommendations, in order to give us the absolute. If we run into hiccups, here's the challenge. So indulge me. If we run into hiccups in the project, this procedure that we've adopted will allow us to absorb them without putting the expiration date into jeopardy. If we do the full process, we cannot afford any hiccup, because that would put us beyond. And that's just the sheer number of times, dates, committee schedule meetings, and those kinds of things. We just don't have enough dates and opportunities to allow for the process. So this actually does allow us a few small hiccups to have a kind of time to have maybe, if necessary, an emergency meeting and get that properly called, spoken, and so this is actually gives us a lot of comfort and probably a little bit of breathing room. Not much, but a little. So that's why
Who took minutes? Where are the minutes?
there'll be, I don't know.
Oh. I remember you waving around when we didn't have minutes for the other
Yeah,
one,
for
but-
7 meetings.
Well, I'm just saying, where are the
Councillor
minutes?
Trombetta, Chair Trombetta.
Yeah.
If you would like to keep rehashing all the discussions, we
No,
can talk.
we're done
we
here.
can
Thank-
compare notes to notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just keep going, keep digging.
No, digging for what, Counselor Bosma? Counselor Chichuk.
Call the question.
All those in, sorry, I need a
I
seconder.
need a seconder to call the question.
I got the mayor.
I know.
Ready? All those in favor of calling the question? Thank you. All those in favor? And that carries.
Yes, we do.
Next. Amendment to budget. Director of Public Works, Bren Julian, report, RFD PW 18, 2017, 2017 Guide Rail Tender Authorization. The recommendation report, RFD PW 18, 2017 Guide Rail Tender Authorization dated May 15, 2017 be received, and that council hereby accepts the tender submission in the amount of $124,701 plus HST by Peninsula Construction, Inc. for the installation of 2 new guide rail systems at bridges, and that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with Peninsula Construction. I need a mover and a seconder. Mayor Joyner, Councillor Bell, comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries. Moving on to other business, Mayor Joyner, regional projects referred to from March 20th. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I duly appreciate the
Summer's almost over.
Yeah, I appreciate a couple of the giggles, but we've had some busy committee meetings in council, but here it is, and it is going to potentially change too, as well as more projects come on board too as well. I'm going to start by talking about Niagara Regional Road 12, our landfill site here in West Lincoln. There is some site improvements for a capital budget item of $12,000. Also sticking with the Niagara Regional Road 12 landfill site, cell number 4. There's capital budget number of $140,000. And then also, keeping with Road 12, there is a leachate collection system manhole replacement for $220,000. Now, please don't ask me to explain what that is. I do not know, and I didn't bring the description of what that means, especially the last one. But we're talking about roughly $372,000 spent on our Road 12 landfill site owned by the region. Moving on to structural rehabilitation, Reese Bridge on Regional Road 69 of $2 million. That's Regional Road 69 Reese Bridge will be going to construction this year for an April tender. That might cause some heartache as Regional Road 69 is a well-traveled road going east to west. Unfortunately, there will be detour signs put up during the next of weeks to inform people that Regional Road 69 will be out of commission while the bridge is being replaced. Also, there is a $500,000 facility upgrade in West Lincoln for the Smithville and Pelham patrol yards. This is a value for money audit, which means that the regional government will be looking at both patrol yards, being the one on 30 Road in Smithville and the Pelham Road yard on Regional Road 20 and Victoria Avenue, Regional Road 24. You can just imagine value for money audit. They're trying to look how they can create some efficiencies and go down to one patrol yard as opposed to maintaining 2. Want to talk about the 2007 storm sewers and culverts. That is $1.5 million. Operations 2017 storm sewers and culverts operations has some culvert work planned under this program on Regional Road 9 and Regional Road 2 in West Lincoln. Excuse me. I also want to move into water. There's nothing specific on the water side for West Lincoln, although there is a very big project. It's a new storage facility being created in Grimsby that will provide benefit to the West Lincoln municipality since they are part of that water system. As everybody around this table realizes that our water system is in Grimsby that deals with water and sewer. The 2017 budget amount for that project is $14 million. And with the growth that is coming to West Niagara, this is absolutely a vital component of our water. Wastewater, there is no capital on 2017 on the wastewater side for West Lincoln. Now, let's get into the projects in progress. Region Road 63, or otherwise known as Campbell Road, there is a bank stabilization project. This detailed design assignment to be issued in the spring of 2017. Construction money is currently budgeted for 2018. Regional Road 20, Phase 1, South Grimsby Road 6 to Griffin Street. The RFP for detailed design being created now. I expect to start utility relocations end of 2017 and construction budgeted for Phase 1 in 2018. So that's basically from South Grimsby Road 6, the potential roundabout, to our Confusion Corner. Regional 20 at South Grimsby Road 5, road reconstruction. This was awarded in 2016. Construction has now started, and you'll see good folks from King Construction out there. Regional Road 20, Phase 2, Town Line Road to Industrial Park. The RFP for the detailed design to be issued in 2018. Construction is budgeted for 2019. Regional Road 14, Mill Creek Bridge and slope stabilization. That is a May tender with July construction. And the 2017 hot mix, Phase number 1, Regional Road 12, Grimsby Road from Mud Regional Road 20. The tender is mid-March. Construction schedule is not known at this time. It'll probably will happen sometime during the fall. So that is the stretch of highway on Road 12 in front of Boschers from the tracks south to Regional Road 20. That's just an absolute terrible road. And the Grimsby Water Reservoir currently at 40% design. So folks, there is the list of potential projects for 2017, some of them being funded in 2016 and some of them being funded in 2018 and 2019. I'll take comments and questions. Mike.
Thank you. Through you to the mayor. Yes, I love that. It's very nice. You say 140,000 for cell number 4. Does that mean that the other 3 cells are, I gather the first 2 probably are full and the third one's getting close to full?
Thank you for that question, Councilor Rayner. I can't ask that. Could I get the liaison, the person who sits on Regional Road 12, to answer that? And if you don't know the answer, let's just refer it to another time, and we'll get that answer.
No, they're starting to design the cell for, I shouldn't say design, put the base in for it now, getting ready for preparation. We've got about another 50 years worth of landfill site left over at Regional Road 12. Their recycling program is tremendous. The amount of fill going into our landfill, when that dump originally opened, they estimated about 40 years worth of life in it. It's been open for quite a few years, and now we're at 50 years of life. The preparation of cell 4 is just that. It's prepping the cell to get it ready. We still have many, many years left.
Thank you. I sat on that board for a number of terms. It's very interesting, that landfill and how that cell system works. Through you to Councillor Bell, do you know how many cells that it's going to be in total when it is filled in 50 years?
No, I can't honestly answer that.
I'm
I could
just
estimate
curious.
what we've heard, but I can't give you an honest answer, so I can find out for you, though.
Okay, thank you. That's the first question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Now through back to the mayor again. You mentioned the bridge is going down on Regional Road 69. How long is it going to be down for? How long is that road going to be closed?
I would suggest that bridge will be down for upwards of 12 to 18 months. I'll look at Director Brent Julian to give clarification to that, please, if he knows.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Rayner, we don't have that information exactly yet. There is a road realignment that goes with that, so I would say we're looking at 12 months minimum, in there, but I can certainly find that out.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Julian. So they're taking that 90 Ben out?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Rayner. Yes.
Oh, that's good, because that was treacherous.
Yeah.
I remember Alderman back then, Johnson, saying how he dreaded going around that bridge with farm equipment. It was
Because it has wooden rails.
Okay, one more question, if you don't mind, through to the mayor. Did you mention in any of this, and I think maybe you did, but maybe you didn't, is there anything in there from the region for the embankment rehabilitation in Warner on that curve? You mentioned embankment, you had mentioned something about rehabilitation of embankment or something.
Yeah.
But I think. it was
63, yeah.
Is there anything for Warner? Because that has been on the books for a long time. I believe there's actually been costing done on it. I remember as an alderman, I believe there were 3 different quotes came in on the degree of work you wanted to do on it, depending on the lifespan you wanted. But after that, I haven't heard much about it, and it's still falling in.
I can tell you what has been done is that there has been some property that has been purchased along that road in anticipation of actually going in there and doing some bank stabilization and rerouting that road along there. I believe that there has been some money put aside for that project in previous budgets, regional budgets, but there is no date that has been set to actually start the construction. I know that they've bought some land. I know that money's been put away, but as for a construction date, that hasn't been established just yet.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, is there any chance you can check with the region and see how far we are with regards to this project? I'm hoping it's still in the works. It's kind of not put on the back burner, you know what I mean? Because it's been on the back burner for a long time.
Yes, Mr. Julian, can you answer that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Rayner. There is a placeholder in their 10-year capital budget, but at this point, as the mayor alluded, it's a placeholder so that the project stays alive. It is a rather intense and expensive project, so the region is most likely just working out when and how they can squeeze that in the budget, but they're keeping it in that capital budget.
Mr. Julian, can you also answer with some of the Band-Aid solutions that have come forward in order to stabilize that bank?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Rayner and the mayor, I'll attempt a little bit of it. I know that they have lowered some of the areas of the embankment, and I know that they have some monitors that they're continually monitoring that are micro, I forget what they're called, but sensors that are in the soils, and they're monitoring it continually.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I know a number of years ago, I believe the most expensive of the 3 options was like $1 million, and that was a number of years ago, so it wouldn't surprise me if that was almost doubled by now. But it definitely is a road that needs attention. There's a lot of heavy trucks that go around it, and they've repaved it once when they resurfaced all the way from 65 up through to the through Warner, and it's broken away, and it's just throwing good money away until we properly reinforce that embankment. Putting new asphalt and everything is just wasting the taxpayers' money. And it would be nice if it could get done, because it's not going to go away. I mean, we've got to address it. And the longer we delay like we have now, the cost is almost doubled. It's almost better to get it done a long time ago. So I just appreciate if you can keep letting them know that it is important, because boy, if that lets go, somebody's going to get killed. That is a long drop to the bottom, a very long drop. In an ice storm, it wouldn't be impossible for somebody to slide right off that road and go right down the whole embankment. So, thank you.
Thank you very much,
So,
Councilor Rayner.
can I just answer that, Mr. Chair, quickly? So it remains to be a priority at Regional Council when we talk about when we talk about budgets and budget deliberations at Region. Unfortunately, there are many cases like that all across Niagara, and there's just one more thing that I have to speak loudly for when it comes to budget time for West Lincoln. Thank you.
Councilor Bell.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Joyner, would it be possible for you to email that list of projects out to council?
Absolutely, Council, I can do that. And I forgot one actually that's not on here and has actually been brought forward at a later date. Everyone understands that there's guardrails and there's transmission lines that are on the 30 road curve where the regional sheds are now. The region is in the process, RFP, of actually lighting that whole S-bend up like a Christmas tree. And that should give a few people a little bit more assurance at nighttime, because it is a pretty dark corner. And I know that the commissioner has been out there with Mr. Sean McCulley and Councillor Bell and myself at nighttime to actually basically see how dark it is, and it's dark. So looking forward to that entire curve being, as I say, lit up like a Christmas tree soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Joanna. That's good news. Been waiting a long time for it, and it's been at least 6 months to get to where we are with it, so that'll be welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Bosman.
Thank you very much. Actually, just an addendum. If you look at what they did in Binbrook there, that's incredible with those little lights and LEDs and stuff like that. You can't miss the road there.
Corner of Trinity Church.
Yeah, that's incredible. Anyways, just a comment, and it was highlighted by Councillor Rayner that the Warner section of the road was paved, and then the stabilization, wrecked it. And I received some complaints just recently because chunks of Canberra Road, Regional Road 63, were paved, and then there was like the worst section was avoided, and people in that worst section are like, well, what about us? But that's due to the fact that that's the section that's now going to be rehabilitated because of the curve in the road. So just if you receive comments from people in that neighborhood, and I say that to my councillor in Ward 2 that I share, that's why that was. I did check into that, and that was the reason given them, which I passed on to that resident, but some others might say that, so just to take note of that. Thanks. Glad it's happening.
Thank you, Councillor Bosman. Any other further comments or questions? Thank you, Mayor Joyner. Members of council, any other business of informative nature? Councillor Bell? Councillor Bosman?
Yeah, just briefly, and I know some people might groan when I say this, but the ad hoc library committee hands its minutes to the library board, and they are referenced here in the minutes that are on number 5. Thank you.
Councillor Ganan?
Nothing, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for allowing me, or councilors, thanks for allowing me to ask this question of the Director of Public Works. And I'm going to do a little preamble here. As you know, councilors, we've had a few accidents on Spring Creek Road and Industrial Park Road, the North Industrial Park extension. And I know a lot of concerned residents have said, you have to turn this into a four-way stop. Mr. Julian and the people who work for his department, the Public Works Department, have looked at this intensely. They have increased the size of the stop signs. They've actually put what are they called, Brent? The lines going forth.
Through Mr. Chair to the mayor, they're just hazard delineators.
Hazard delineators on the stop signs too as well. As has been explained to me many times before, is that particular intersection does not warrant a four-way stop. And in actual fact, if we were to do that, we could be in a little bit of legal trouble too as well if an accident was to occur there. Quite honestly, I need to tell the residents of West Lincoln to be very careful at that intersection and check, double check, and triple check. Quite honestly, what's happening there is that people are not paying attention and they're blowing the stop sign. And it's very unfortunate, and I know the residents are upset, but we have done everything that we can do. We've even put signs up to say, stop. There's a stop sign ahead. We even reduced the speed along Industrial Park Road and Spring Creek Road down to 50 in that section. We haven't stopped looking at ways that we can increase the visibility in that intersection. I think probably the last thing that we're going to do is put some kind of flashing beacon. Mr. Julian, can you speak to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the members of the committee. There's a couple things, and the mayor is correct. We have done a couple of stop sign warrants, and it does not warrant it. Our concern is that if we knowingly put a four-way stop there when it's not warranted, and there is a far severe accident, that the township can be named liable. We are trying a pilot little project, hopefully at the end of this week, some signage, some slow warn, they're traffic calming signage that if a car hits them, they will just knock right over. They're foldable, and that is one of the locations that we're going to try. It's a bit challenging there because it is a tar and chip road, easily done on an asphalt road, but we are going to auger down and put some concrete caissons, if you will, and fasten that down. Because when I was out with the representative of this traffic calming signage company, we were out there and it was broad daylight, and a gentleman actually tried to run the stop sign on Spring Creek. He was dead slow, and for whatever reason, he just did not see the car that was actually in the intersection. And we know that it's not necessarily a problem with the cars on Spring Creek. We do see that maybe they're traveling a bit fast, and that's what we're going to try to approach. We are looking at, as the mayor said, at putting a beacon on top of the stop signs on Industrial Park Road, but we've got oversized stop signs, we've got hazard delineators, we've got stop bars out there, and the beacon is just one more step. So we're really going to try this pilot thing and try to slow vehicles down on Spring Creek as they're approaching.
Thank you. Councilor Rayner?
Thank you. I was about to say, and the mayor said it at the end, to me, the answer would be a flashing red light above the stop sign. When you're kind of thinking about something and you're driving, signs don't grab your attention any more than trees sometimes or houses on the side of the road. But if you've got something that's irritating up ahead, which a flashing red light is, if you're kind of in that not paying attention, dazed, thinking about something else, that's something to me that would grab your attention much more than kind of an inert sign that, or you've got a whole bunch of different letters, or you've got a whole bunch of different writing on it, slow down, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't grab you when you're not totally focused, but something like that, to me, the best answer to that would be a flashing red light on top of the stop sign. It gets your attention, even when you're not really paying attention. I think that would really help that situation.
Thank you, Councilor Rayner. But, people still breaking the law you can never control that, right? So no matter what you do, and there are other municipalities that have struggled with these issues all over, and you hear it on the news all the time about speeds on our roads, running through stop signs. People still got to obey the law to maintain the law. So, thank you, Councilor Rayner. Any other questions, comments? I have none, so we'll move on to new business. Only items of intention, we have none. We have confidential matters, we have them, and we have none but we have them for administration. So I'll just get the chair to come back in here.
We adjourn public.
And meeting adjourned at 9:13.